Hey everybody, this is Perch. Okay. Well, we got a viewer question here. I shouldn't start out that way. This is this is just fine. Um, okay, this is kind of an interesting one. It's one to think about. Did heroes in the same costume signify unpopularity? All right. Now you may wonder what is this what's this viewer getting to? So let's see what we got. It says, "Hey Perch, I was looking to Black Orchid from DC as someone who knows next to nothing about her, and learned there are four of her. It got me thinking about the two other Spider Women who went into obscurity after Jessica Drew cemented her popularity. Even the Robins, who I first thought were exceptions, had Jason Todd killed because of his unpopularity. I don't know if he was as unpopular as much as I think the fans wanted to see if DC would go through with it. That's my belief. I don't think people have been talking about the death of Jason Todd, and they did in case you didn't know, once upon a time, DC did this fan vote to see if should Robin live or die. And I think DC was kind of expecting it would go die. There's been a lot of interviews kind of after the fact that feel like a lot of revisionist history. I just want to throw that out there. But a decent amount of people have had alternate views on kind of how all that went down. But my belief is DC believed people would say die because death was kind of exciting in comics, and that's more or less how it rolled. And but I don't think it was because he was unpopular. I think because people wanted to see DC kill off a major character. The creators knew that was probably good business. That's why they put the contest in play in the first place. And I think the fans wanted to see if DC would actually go through with it and live up to what they claimed, and they did for a while. So anyway, but I don't think it had anything to do with unpopularity. Just for what it's worth, I don't think it tracks from the point you're making here, but just to throw that out there. I know some of you can clearly educate me. By the way, please don't point me to interviews. There's a couple of people from DC who've given interviews going, "We never believed in a million years the fans would choose death," and I bullshit, you didn't. Anyway, okay, back to the mail. Comparing this with how it is now, every popular character having at least one good doppelganger, it feels jarring. I was wondering if you also think multiple people with the same moniker used to indicate an unpopular character. Or maybe I'm just making all this up. Thanks for bringing Mumbles into the world. Don't kiss up to Mumbles. Um, Jesus, what are you doing? Um, Nothing quite, by the way, beats the feeling of not doing the video in the car just with very low effort, as I admit and is true. To actually sitting down and like spending some time doing a video, like putting in the editing and doing that work, and then in comes Mumbles like, "I just hope Perch stops doing videos someday," and you're like, "Oh my God, why do I even bother?" I just do the shitty audio. Doesn't matter. Anyway, it's a fun time. What are you gonna do? One of these days it'll all be over, and then Mumbles can go. I don't know, haunt Yellow Flash or one of those people. Anyway, so I don't think having the same costume, having the same title. I don't think it necessarily meant an unpopular character, but it did mean that there was, they were kind of out of ideas for what that character could do or where that character could go. And so they were borrowing a legacy character. Now, what's interesting is in the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, there's been a lot more talk about legacy characters and like, people replacing characters. And this is the result of kind of Marvel did this when they did their, was it all new, all different Marvel Now? Or it was Marvel Now. But I mean, they're basically going all in with the look, there's a new Captain America, and there's a new Iron Man, and there's a new Hulk, and there's a new, like, they switched everything at once. And somebody at Marvel thought this would be a clever idea. And it clearly was not a clever idea. I think, in fact, it was a pretty terrible idea. Once, if you really sat down and you gave it some serious thought, like, hey, we've got a bunch of characters that are known around the world, and we're starting to do movies on a bunch of them. And but so for the first time, we're getting a bunch of normies, so only kind of a vague understanding of who these characters are, these major character of ours. But they're now coming into comics, and we're getting this kind of renewed interest from some of the collectors who maybe we're still collecting, but they lapsed because suddenly comic books are getting greater importance and the dollars are going up. I know. Let's take all of our characters, all of our legacy characters, and race and gender swap them, or sometimes not even those two. Just insert some new person into the mix, and this will be it'll be cool because all the old classic characters have new and modern 2015 versions of them, and who wouldn't love that? Well, it turns out nobody liked that, including even the new fans they're trying to attract. But all of this stuff, once upon a time, if you're going back to like the 70s, the idea of kind of creating another Robin or another Spider Woman or some of these characters, it was seen, and people in the companies would admit as such, like, we don't have any ideas, so we're just going to try and throw the same costume on them, and that will be fun. We'll see what happens with that. But that was basically the kind of an admission of defeat. Both Marvel and DC writers made those comments, like, we don't have anything better. That was how it was described. We don't have a better idea, so fuck it. And that's how some of these characters came to be. That's how some of the evolution happened. And so it's interesting where now we fast forward to today, and you've got people in both in comics and outside of comics going, no, it doesn't mean that at all. It kind of always meant that. I mean, in all honesty, if you just take a giant step back, if you have the opportunity of cramming a character into the same costume, or getting a brand new IP that is completely new, no baggage, no past comics, no confusion, something quite bluntly from a commercial standpoint, something new you could sell. If you're able to do that, you're definitely going to pick that route. It is not easier to come up with a Miles Morales, and this is a Spider-Man, but a different Spider-Man. He was in a different multiverse, but then he got kind of crammed into our multiverse, and then, like, you go through all this stuff, and it's like, nobody that doesn't make anyone in the comic writers or comic publisher licensing department, doesn't make anybody's job easier to do that. If they had this new character called Night Shadow, and it was and that was who Miles Morales was, and he got just as popular, in fact more popular movies, and the characters really took off, like Wolverine did, like Harley Quinn did, like Deadpool did. If you had a character like that, you would definitely go for that option. But the reason why they borrow the costumes and do this is kind of what people said in the 70s. They didn't really have any ideas. They wanted to do something new. They wanted to borrow from the popularity and success of something else. Now, that definitely doesn't apply to a character like Black Orchid, who, you just had different takes on the character and different writers wanting to do something. But the reason they were allowed to do something is because, quite frankly, nobody cared about Black Orchid as a character. Meaning, they could mess around with that identity and that costume because it really didn't matter. They were out of ideas. They like, well, we'll try something. I mean, so in a sense, you're correct. It does signify an unpopular character, but more than anything, it kind of fits into two camps. Either it's not a character anyone really cares about, so screw it. We'll kind of just borrow some of the legacy and hope that breathes a little bit of interest into the concept that we're doing. That's option one. Or option two is, hey, we kind of really want to get this character over and we have an idea, but we're not confident the idea will stand on its own 2 feet, so we're going to borrow some popularity from someone else. And that's where you get to, I mean, Spider-Man certainly, I still maintain, I've had fierce arguments with people over this, that Sam Wilson, the Falcon, was a cool character, is a cool character, and quite frankly, with what was happening in the MCU, they were well on their way of having the Falcon be a badass character as the Falcon, as an original character. In my mind, to me, and I stand by this, giving him the Captain America mantle and having being Sam Wilson also Captain America, I think puts a glass ceiling on him. It actually reduces his upside. He will always be saddled with, well, he's now tight connected to Steve Rogers in a way that he certainly their stories shared some stuff in the past, but he was still his own character. Now he's forever kind of linked to this mantle. I mean, unless of course they break off of the Captain America, they just let him be Falcon again. But you know, I think it's net reductive. I think the barrier that Miles Morales is going to have over time is that they do have to explain how he's another Spider-Man. I think that's a problem. I also think, and I have no way of knowing this, that's one reason why when DC started to really invest more into John Stewart, that they called him just John Stewart. Now there they had a little bit of a benefit because the cartoon came out and they used the John Stewart Green Lantern rather than Hal Jordan Green Lantern in the cartoon, and I think that probably helped. But in general, you'll notice in the comics they went harder into calling him John Stewart. They were trying to carve out a different identity, and he also had the benefit of the Green Lantern Corps. Was never a singular thing, so he could kind of forge his own role. But by and large, when characters borrow the identity of someone else, it is as you say, either it's signifying some level of unpopularity, or it's just it's trying to shortcut the work it takes to be popular. I'll throw this out to you, and just as food for thought. I know I mentioned some of this in another video. The Punisher appeared in the 70s. In the 90s, the Punisher popularity grew so big that they actually had two Punisher comics, and he was selling quite a bit. The merchandise started selling, incredibly well, and the Punisher was one of Marvel's most valuable properties. Not quite 20 years after the character was introduced. What does that tell you? Well, first of all, it tells you that things take time. You have to put in the work. And second, it's that, even if something doesn't get mega popular right away, if you invest in the character, if you put some good stories into it, you can do some good story writing, you don't decide to, make Punisher, Captain America, like Matt Fraction almost did. But anyway, you don't try and say, well, the only thing that's going to make this character popular is we better borrow somebody else's identity. You don't need to do that. And maybe the counter to that argument is you could say Ghost Rider, Johnny Blaze, introduced again, I believe in the 70s, popular, but not, okay. And then in the 90s, Danny Ketch and this kind of renewed focus on Ghost Rider, popular, that character became one of Marvel for, not as long as some of the others, but definitely became one of Marvel's most popular IPs during that time period. And so there, you can't argue, hey, there's Danny Ketch coming in, stealing the identity of Johnny Blaze. And did I say Johnny Storm earlier? I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Anyway, that's my point. I guess you can certainly do a lot of things. It's usually not a good sign, and you usually have to work over it. Even in the Danny Ketch example, even though there's a lot of good hype and good sales in the 90s, it was short-lived. It wound up being a short-term burst, and then it faded. That's how a lot of these things work. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about it. Is a similar costume, similar name, just a sign of unpopularity? Curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.